My name is James Jacoby. I'm the project lead for WordPress and bbpress. I'm on the WordPress security team and am involved in some multi-site stuff and other core development stuff.
Awesome. So what got you involved with the BBs rather than going straight into core development at first?
So I got involved with the BBs because my intro to PHP development was through PHP-BB. And I was looking for another open source project that would let me essentially categorize topics or posts in multiple ways, and found bbpress first before I even found WordPress. And it had the taxonomy structure originally for the first version of bbpress let you use forums or tags and kind of tag things in multiple ways. And I was like, well, that's neat, but then what if you want to have pages or a website or something else? And I was like, oh, there's this WordPress thing. And so I kind of came in the back door that way.
Is it widely known anymore what BB stands for?
I don't know that it is widely known what BB stands for. But BB stands for bulletin boards, which is sort of where the our shortcode implementation for WordPress core is loosely based on BB code, which is how forums used to convert bolds and italics and images and everything else were those square brackets that we've all come to know and love. And so BB code was just a way to convert little things into formatted text, and WordPress inherited that through bbpress, having it originally through BB code.
What exactly had you interested in forums and bulletin boards from a community perspective? Like, were you involved heavily in some kind of online communities?
A lot of them. So I was involved in a bunch of, I guess my intro to the web in general was largely through started going way back, would have been through America Online anyways, which was all chat and email and other terrible things that were going on through AOL at that point. But it was fun, but there was only so much you could do, and even in the old school days of hacking America Online for no good reason, there was no sense of ownership in anything that there was even back in the early or mid 90s. And so having your own community was kind of hard to do back then. And there were some pieces of forum software like vBulletin or the old original versions of PHP-BB that kind of made it sort of easy, but you still had to know some PHP in order to customize anything at all. There was no themes, there was no plugins, there was a whole mod system that was like hacking core, where you would modify files one at a time or run a script against all of your files, and they would break all the time. And so it was usually through car forums or local forums or other things where it became natural for me to use PHP-BB for trying to do builds and solve problems totally the wrong way to build a website or trying to do those things. And that's where I ended up teaching myself PHP, was through a fork of PHP-BB that some guy in France had forked because he wanted hierarchical categories when PHP-BB wouldn't let you have nested categories.
That's a hill to die on right there.
Yeah. And so it ended up a lot of my coding style, a lot of the way that I write code, a lot of the approach, and everything kind of comes from the days of watching this guy, Pierre, whomever it was, go through PHP-BB and then sort of refactor it into what it was, his version of it and his vision. And even in the early days, before I truly comprehended what the GPL was or what the licensing was or why it was important, it was ingrained into me that it was vitally important to allowing Pierre to do what he wanted to do with PHP-BB and forking it and modifying it and taking code from the Area 51 branch of PHP-BB3 and backporting it to 2 into his own fork to teach himself things. And so in 1999 and 2001 and 2, I accidentally was working with GPL code, not really understanding where it would carry me now 17 years later. So
you were relatively, at least, a kid at the time.
I appreciate that, but I'm 37 now, so I was a 20-year-old kid.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, my background was from Visual Basic and Microsoft Access and a Microsoft world of things, and my first job out of high school that I didn't deserve, where I made more money than I know what to do with. I was at for 2 years before I got burnt out and turned off by software development. It was just too much work. I was like the only architect at that place, and doing all of the design and the development and the database abstraction and schema and all the architecture for everything, and it just wasn't fun. And so I left and tinkered with it. But I feel like the transition from Visual Basic, as much as like people make fun of Basic or Visual Basic as a language or whatever, it prepared me for a lot of PHP development and work, because it's pretty simple and abstracted nicely. And back then, PHP 4 was very similar procedurally to Visual Basic or anything else. And so, granted, the Visual Basic that I was writing was option explicit. Everything was like very strictly defined. Everything like had to be done very precisely. And PHP being like a loose language, where, I mean, we're getting better at tightening everything up now, but it was pretty foreign to me that you could just like let variables equal whatever they want and like hope that they would come out for the best. And so it's nice now that we're getting back and comfortable with WordPress development, with everything being very strictly defined and everything else. I think is better and good.
How did you discover that the open source and WordPress side of things was a viable career opportunity compared to the more corporate-y, proprietary stuff that you were more accustomed to as a younger developer?
So for me, it was always easier, and this is, I think, this definitely goes for me, but I don't know if it's unique. It's just hard to put into words. Is that it is easier for me to own what it is that I'm working on, because the entire process is generally, like, the learning curves are sometimes pretty steep, and it is easier for me to kind of learn in private and get a good baseline foundation for, and like get a baseline understanding for what problems it is I'm even trying to solve, and then be able to emerge with having solved those problems and share that with people. And it doesn't matter what I'm learning. If I'm working on a car or working on the house or working on software, I feel like my approach ends up being the same no matter what. I need a little bit of time to work on it. I need to be able to figure out where I like ramp up to mastery relatively fast, and then ask for feedback on a thing. And that wasn't my experience, in my original job outside of high school. And I don't know that that would have even really been my experience at other jobs that I had that had nothing to do with software. It was always very like process driven, or one thing at a time, or go complete this task and come back and whatever. And it just didn't work well for me. So the open source approach generally of having it kind of ebb and flow and come and go, and it felt a little bit more natural, I guess. And that, for WordPress, the viability for it, for me as a piece of software, was interesting, because I really like bbpress, I really like multi-site, and I really like the idea of backpress a lot. And so my original take on WordPress was that it needed a lot of work, it needed a lot of help. But at the same time, the community was already so strong and inviting. Even back then, in 2006 or 7, everyone was happy to have help. And that wasn't my experience with PHPBB necessarily. That wasn't really my experience at like other jobs that I had or were looking at. And so when someone rewards you for having contributed any small thing, is instantly attractive, and so you kind of just keep doing it. And for me, a lot of my ideas or my approaches are usually pretty terrible at first, or they're not good, or they're not really well thought out. And sometimes it takes a couple of years for those things to come back around. But I never felt like even the worst of my ideas were like that poorly received, which I think is what makes WordPress as a platform and a community and all those things safe and inviting, and like a good place to build a career if you're going to. Because I don't know that a lot of places have the same setup or structure or support structure with each other to be able to call people out if somebody's not, saying the right thing, or not being friendly to somebody that maybe needs an extra nudge or whatever. I don't know. It always has seemed pretty, comparatively speaking, relatively speaking, to other platforms, pieces of software, it's always seemed like everyone is trying really hard to do their best work all the time. And if you're going to have a career doing anything, ideally you're surrounding yourself with people that are healthy and like-minded, diverse, and trying to like solve the same problems in a really fun way. That has always been my experience with WordPress. So I hope it continues that way.
What do you think is most important for WordPress going forward over the next couple of years, as we're pretty clearly in a transition period right now?
So it's interesting because the transition period for WordPress right now, in my opinion, and we're looking at a lot of RESTful things and trying to have external APIs, and the web is sort of changing and evolving, and what WordPress's role in that is, any one of us is allowed to come along and influence however we feel like we can. And so I think that in and of itself is one of the strengths that WordPress as a platform has that many of the other ones don't start off with. They have to figure out how to do what I think is the hardest part of having a platform on the web, which is let people organically influence it in as positive of a way as possible. So with that being said, since we already have that, the technical challenges are, they're interesting because the stack that WordPress is built on is not necessarily the most attractive one to new developers that are coming into the current version of the web that we have. We still use Subversion for version control. We have PHP, which love it or hate it, we have it. And we still use MySQL, and it's nice that we have MariaDB and we have options, but for the most part, it's not using the latest and greatest of things. But ideally, the abstraction that we have with a externally facing API means that all of the things that people don't think are all that attractive are tucked behind the kitchen, right? They're in a place where hopefully there will be a small subset of people that enjoy dealing with the things behind the scenes. I consider myself one of those people. But then everyone else will be able to interact with WordPress in a way that they find rewarding and that doesn't involve them needing to know how the sausage is made and where the soup comes from and everything else. So I think it's important that we still keep in mind that PHP isn't going anywhere. PHP is getting better with every release, and that there will always be a need for PHP developers that understand how it works, that can write good, clean code in a way that everyone is happy with, and that there will always be a front-end developer that's doing either JavaScript or who knows what, that will always be interacting with these APIs. I think the hardest part for us now as a group of developers that are maybe familiar with how all these things work, but are actively also learning how to deploy these things live to the world, is that external APIs are for life. Like those things are, if you ship it with a certain schema or a certain approach, people expect for it to be that way. We can talk about how many times PayPal or Facebook have changed an API or an endpoint that's frustrated us, and now we are responsible for not frustrating others. And this is the first time that we really truly have that responsibility on our own shoulders. And so if we need to change a user endpoint or a multi-site endpoint or whatever it is, we suddenly need V2, V3, V4 of our own APIs, and that means discussions and meetings and setting up our future success so that we don't make those same mistakes. And as there are more developers and more contributors and more people involved, those meetings take more time and things move more slowly. And so there are all sorts of things that we're leveling up and learning and communicating in a way that maybe we haven't had to before. So I think our own hurdles are going to be internally, or within how we adapt and adjust to migrating WordPress into I mean, it's 27% of the web and all of those things, but we have to put our professional pants on now, and we work from home where pants are optional. We have to put the professional pants on a little bit to be able to say that you can count on us to do a good job with every single release, and that's hard to be able to guarantee when it's a bunch of independents or a bunch of small shops or whatever else. So I think our own marketing, our own packaging, our own approach is really the hardest part about all this. I'm less concerned about other platforms, which maybe is my own naivety or mistake, but I'm less concerned about other platforms than I am about making sure that the WordPress team and contributors and the security team and everybody else just does as good of a job as they can. making this a viable thing going forward.
Where can people go to keep up with your ideas and what you're doing on the web?
So if you'd like to follow my very long-winded ideas, you can read my blog at jjj.blog. Follow me on Twitter at jjj. Follow me on GitHub at jjj. And if you want to see pictures of my dogs, you can follow me on Instagram at James Jacoby, because somebody else has at jjj and they're not giving it up. So,
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.